To the U.S. now, where New Orleans is bracing for torrential rains as Tropical Storm Barry begins to move onshore. Strong winds as Barry bears down slowly on the city, and weather forecasters say this means it's likely to dump more water than otherwise. Authorities are warning of potential deadly flooding across the Gulf Coast. Around 50,000 people have lost power in Louisiana. Joining me now from New Orleans is DW's correspondent Helena Humphrey. Helena, tell me exactly where you are and what's the situation like around you?
Hi, Amrita. Well, you can see behind me the Mississippi River. It's currently at abnormally high levels for this time of the year. Tropical Storm Barry is moving in with very high winds of 150 kilometres an hour. And when it reaches here, it's expected to be a Category 1 hurricane. Now, as much as the winds are a worry, of course, I think the greatest worry here is the water. It's expected to dump up to half a metre of water here on New Orleans over the course of the weekend. That would be a record not seen in decades. And as I mentioned, that river looking rather high at the moment. And as such, President Trump has declared a federal state of emergency across Louisiana.
And Helena, how are people coping with the situation there?
Well, here in New Orleans, it is a flood-prone area. The ground is already sodden from flooding earlier this week, so the sandbags are out in the French Quarter. Many shops are already boarded up. The National Guard has deployed over 3,000 people to be part of rescue teams with helicopters and rescue boats on standby in Louisiana. But this certainly will be a test of the flood defences, which were ramped up in the wake of Hurricane Katrina 14 years ago. That's such a deadly hurricane, of course, in the United States. Now, currently, I can say that the levees are at 6 metres high, and the water coming in when the Mississippi River crests, it's expected to crest at 5 metres. So there's not a great safety margin. That said, all the floodgates have been closed, and the Army engineers who have rebuilt those levees in the wake of Katrina say they are expecting it to hold. That said, though, in the wake of Katrina, I think it's fair to say that there is some public mistrust in authorities, and some people have simply taken the decision themselves to get out of town.
And briefly, Helena, how confident are people then that the authorities have taken adequate measures not to see a repeat of what happened during Hurricane Katrina?
Well, Amrita, I think it's fair to say that people here are used to this routine of hurricanes, although they have ramped up, likely due to global warming. But they know the drill. They know to hunker down and get the bottled water and dried food in, for example. But I think in terms of the long game, there is some criticism there. Flood defences were meant to be rebuilt after Katrina. 14 billion was invested, and that still has not been completed.
Helena Humphrey in New Orleans, thank you very much for that.